Good evening, everyone. So, we will start our session today. Let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible. Please let me know in the chat box. Yeah, okay. So, today's concept is functions. Okay, we have completed with arrays, right? So, now we will move to another topic which is functions. So, functions. First, we need to learn what is function, right? So, what is function? In In Java, mainly we call this as methods. Okay, in Java, mainly the functions are called as methods. In other programming language, we will call it as functions. Okay, so what is this method or what is this function? Okay, so function is nothing but it is a block of code which is used to perform some specific task. Okay, what is function? So it is a block of code block of code which is used to perform some specific task to perform some specific task okay to perform some special task we use the functions or methods. It is nothing but a block of code, or we can say a block of statements. Okay, and these methods or functions are the building blocks of any programming language, not only the Java but in other languages also. These functions are the building blocks of programming. Okay, so these functions are the building blocks of the programming language. Okay, so coming to the usage, why we use functions. Okay, so what is the advantages of the function? Okay, so coming to the advantages, so there are so many advantages due to functions or methods. Okay, so the first advantage is we can reduce the repetition of the code. Okay, what we can reduce? We can reduce the repetition of the code. Repetition of the code. You may ask how. Okay, so let me show with some example. So let me go to my Eclipse. Okay, so think that I want to write hello world for 5 times. Okay, so what I will do, simply I will just try to write 5 println statements to write hello world, right? So hello world. So like this what I will do, I will write the 5 println statements. Okay, so this is one of the way how to print hello world for the 5 times. Okay, so instead of, if you observe here, the same statement I am writing 4 more times, which is repetition of the code, right? So this repetition of the code we can avoid with the help of functions or with the help of methods. Okay, so what we will do means we will just create one method. So for now I am just writing the method. I will clearly explain the syntax later. Okay, so let me write. Okay, so I will create a method. So inside this method what I will do, I will just write this statement. Okay, so whenever I need this. Okay, whenever I need this, whenever I need to print hello world, I will just call this method. Okay, I will just call this method. So display. Okay, if I call this method, then this method will be called. Okay, so and this particular statement will get executed. Okay, this is how we can reduce the repetition of the code. Okay, so coming to the second advantage, why we use functions or methods more. So coming to the second advantage, so reusability. Okay, reusability. We can reuse the code again and again. Okay, if there is a function, okay, we wrote some logic inside that function. If we want to add the same logic, okay, in another program, then what we can do, we can simply call this function there, we instead of writing the logic once again. Okay, so instead of writing the logic repetitively, so what we will do, we will just create a function, we will store that logic inside that function, and wherever we want, we just call that function. Okay, so this is how we can have reusability, so with the help of functions. So these are the two main advantages why we use methods. Okay, so I hope it is clear. And coming to the parts. So the function contains two parts. Okay. So the function contains two parts. Okay. So first part is function declaration. Function declaration. And coming to the second part, which is function definition. Function definition. Or we can say it as body also. Okay, these are the two important parts which we will be having in function. So if we take any function, that is divided into two parts, which is function declaration and function definition. Okay, so let me write the syntax of function. So coming to the syntax of function, first we will be having something called as access specifier. Access specifier. And later we will be having modifier, and later we will be having return type, and later we will be having the function name. Okay, inside this we will be having parameters. Okay, so this total thing we will be calling it as function definition. Okay, until here, until the parameters, we will be calling it as function declaration. Okay, so later, after completing this function declaration, so we will be opening the flower braces. So here inside we will be writing all the statements. Okay, whatever the logic we need to execute, all those statements we will be writing inside this function. This total thing within the flower braces, whatever the statements are there, that we will call it as function definition, or we can call it as function body. Okay, so what we call this as function body. Okay, so this is how the syntax of function will look like. So we'll be having access specifier, and we'll be having access modifier, return type, and the function name. So here we will be passing the parameters, and here we will be having the body. So this is how the syntax of function looks. Okay, so Coming to the specifier, what is this access specifier? Okay, so access specifier. So the access specifiers mainly defines the visibility of the method. Okay, what it defines? It defines the visibility of the method. The visibility of the method. Okay, what is this visibility? So in Java, okay, we are having four access specifiers. First one is private, and second one is default, and third one is protected. Okay, so coming to the fourth one, which is public. Okay, these are the four access specifiers which we have in our Java. So what is private? Okay, if we declare any method with private access specifier, then that method we can access only within the class. Okay, that can be accessed only within the class. Only within the class. Okay, coming to the default. Okay, so here if we declare any method with a default access specifier, then that particular method we can access within the class and within the package also. Okay, so what is the package? You may ask, what is the package, right? So we will talk about the package briefly later. For just now, to give clarity, I am just showing what is package and how to create that. If you see here, inside my src, okay, inside my src, I'm having one thing called which with the help of box shape, I'm having com.jsp, right? So this is the package. Okay, inside the package we can have any number of classes. Okay, so what is package? Package is nothing but a container which stores a number of classes. We can say it like this. Okay, package is nothing but it is a container which stores so many number of classes. Collection of classes will become one package. Okay, so if we declare a method with the default keyword, then that particular, okay, then that particular method we can access within the class and within the package also. Okay, but outside the package we cannot access. Okay, so what will happen if we declare default access specifier? So it will be accessed only within the class and within the package. Within the package, outside the package we cannot access this method. Okay, so coming to the protected. Okay, so this protected we can access within the class. Okay, within the class and outside the class also, but with inheritance concept. Okay, and outside the class is also possible, is also possible with the help of inheritance. Okay, so while explaining the inheritance concept, we will discuss about this briefly. Okay, coming to the public. So if we declare any method with public, okay, so that method we can access anywhere. Okay, we can access anywhere. We can access that anywhere, within the class, within the package, outside the package, anywhere we can access. Okay, so this is what access specifier represents. What it defines? It defines the visibility of that method. Okay, so up to what level this method need to be visible, that defines the access specifier. I hope it is clear. So coming to the next, which is modifier. So we will, in Java we are having so many modifiers. Okay, so what is this modifier? What we will do with this modifier? What we will do? Okay, modifier. Why we need this modifier means, with the help of modifier, okay, the method will get additional functionalities. Okay, so with the help of modifiers, the method will get additional functionalities. Additional functionalities. Okay, so the modifiers are nothing but like, we can have a method with static keyword. Okay, then it represents static method. If we add any static keyword as a modifier for a method, then that particular method will become static method. If it is a static, okay, it will be adding some functionality to that method. Means that method, if the method is static, we can access that particular method, okay, with the help of class name. Okay, with the help of class name, we can access it. Okay, so this functionality is provided by this keyword, by this modifier. Okay, and coming to the another one, which is final. Okay, this makes the method final. Okay, like this we are having some more modifiers in Java. We can use those modifiers to add additional functionalities to our method. Okay, so coming to the next, which is return type. Return type is nothing but data type. Okay, that data type can be either primitive data type or non-primitive data type. It can be anything. If the method need not to return anything, then we will give return type as a void. Okay, what we will give? We will give return type as a void. So what is return type defining here in the syntax? So return type is nothing but data type. Okay, it can be anything, any data type, like it can be primitive data type also. Okay, it may be primitive data type, or we can have non-primitive data type also. Data type also. Okay, so anything is okay. And if the method need not to return anything, then we will go with one special keyword, which is void. Okay, so when we will use this void we will use if the method need not to return anything. If the method should not return anything, then we will go for void keyword. If we are not specifying any return type, then we should specify this keyword, which is void. This represents that particular method which is defined with void data type or void return type, that will not return anything. Okay, so that's what it defines. And coming to the function name. So here we need to give, or we need to define a function name for the particular function. Okay, so inside here in the brackets we will be specifying the parameters. Okay, what we will be specifying? We will be specifying the parameters. So this parameters, why we use these parameters? In order to provide the values for the function. Okay, to provide values for the function, we will use parameters. Okay, so parameters. Why we need parameters in the function? We need this because to provide values, or we can say to provide inputs to the function. Inputs to the function, we need these parameters. Okay, and so the function parameters are nothing but those are the variables declared inside declaration. If you observe here, okay, what I said, the total syntax, okay, from here to here, this is nothing but function declaration, right? So those are the function parameters are nothing but those are the variables which are declared inside declaration. Okay, those are declared inside declaration. So where the parameters are declared, they are declared, they are declared inside declaration. Okay, so this helps the parameters helps the programmers to pass values or to pass input to the functions. Okay, how these parameters are declared, right? How the parameters are declared, there is some syntax like we should have first parameter type, and next parameter. Okay, this is the syntax of this is the syntax how we will declare the parameter. So first we will write parameter type, and next we will be having parameter name. Okay, let me write name, parameter name. Okay, so this primitive data type, again it is nothing but data type. It can be non-primitive or primitive. Everything is supported by this parameter type. And coming to the name, we should specify some name. So let me give some example for this. So like int value. So this is one parameter. Okay, and if I declare something like string name, this is one parameter. Okay, this is how we will declare the parameters. Okay, I hope it is clear. So this is about the syntax of function. Okay, inside this we will be writing the logic to perform the task as a function body. What we will give as a function body, we will provide logic to perform the task. Okay, so let me show with simple example how the function works. So let me go here, and if you observe here, for now I'm just using the static keyword and I'm not defining any access specifier. If I am not defining any access specifier, then by default it is default access specifier. Okay, JVM will define it as default method. Okay, default access specifier. If I am not giving any access specifier, by defaultly it will be default, and this is my modifier which I am using. Okay, without modifier, without access specifier also we can write the method. So if we are not giving access specifier, by default it will be considered as default. Okay, without access modifier, okay, without modifier we can have our method. Okay, it is not mandatory that modifier should be there. Without modifier also we can write our functions or methods. Okay, for now just I am using this modifier, and this is my data type because I am not returning anything here. So that is the reason I am giving this return type as a void, and this is my function name which I have given, and I am not giving any parameters here. So this is the instruction which I have given. This is the logic which I have written inside this function. And from here, I am just calling the function. So this is the calling statement. What we call it as? We call it as calling statement. Okay, so what the calling statement should contain? The function name and the parameters list. Okay, within this braces, within these brackets, we need to give parameter list. As I'm not having any parameters here, I'm not providing any values here. Okay, so how does, what is the syntax of calling statement? So we will be representing it with function name and the brackets. Okay, so I hope it is clear. So how JVM will execute this function? Okay, let me show. So let me have some statement before this first, like start main and later let me have like end main. Okay, so how we JVM will execute this program. Okay, so first the JVM will call the main method. We know this, right? So who will call the main method? JVM will call the main method. So after main method is called, okay, so it will go to the first statement of this main method. What is the first statement? Start main, right? So this start main will get executed. Okay, later it will go here to the second statement. So what is present here? Calling statement is present here. So if it is a calling statement, okay, it will here it is not having any body, but it should have body to execute, right? So this is the calling statement. I am calling the method. Once the method is called with the help of calling statement, the execution flow will directly go to this particular method. Okay, so from here to just directly it will go to particular method which is called. Okay, so once it the flow of execution will go to this method, okay, it will enter inside this method and start executing all the instructions which are present inside this function. Okay, so for now I just have one statement which is hello world. Okay, so now it will execute this hello world and there is no other statements to execute. This is the end of the method. Okay, so once the function execution is done, again the flow of control will come back to the same statement where the calling is happened. Okay, so once the function got executed, the flow of control will directly come to the same line where the calling was happened. Okay, from here to again it will go to the next statement which is the println. Here I wrote println. So it will execute this statement and there is no other statements to execute inside this main method, so that it will it will exit the main method and it will exit the total program. Okay, this is how the execution flow of function will happen. Okay, so let me run this program. If you observe here, I got my output in the same order. However, I set the execution flow in the same order, I got my output. I hope it is clear. Let me know quickly in the chat box whether it is clear. Function and the syntax of function. Yes. Okay. Now, one more thing. So, till now we have not provided any parameters, right? So, let me provide parameters now. Okay. So, till now I have not given any parameters. I want to provide parameter now. So, what is my parameter? Means, I am just defining, we know how to declare parameter, right? Parameter type and parameter name. So, parameter type I am giving string. Okay. And let me give as first name. Okay, this is the parameter which I am giving. Okay, so if I am giving parameter, okay, I should give here value also. If you observe here, I am not giving value here. I am not passing any argument here. So whatever the values which you will pass inside the calling statement, those are called as arguments. Okay, all the values which you pass inside the calling statement, those are called as arguments. And whatever the variables you declared inside the function declaration, those are called as parameters. Okay, so there will be so much confusion among this. Some people will say these whatever the values we pass, that values also they call it as parameters, but in the terms of software we call it as arguments. Okay, so whatever the values which we pass inside the calling statement, those are arguments, and whatever the variables we declared inside the function declaration, those are called as parameters. If you observe here, I am having parameter here, but I am not providing any argument here. So that is the reason this function is giving error. Okay, so there are some rules of parameters. Okay, so we will discuss about those rules later. For now, just let me give some value here, like let me give, okay, I'm giving this. So if you observe, I'm getting error because it is of string. If it is a string, I need to give in double quotes, right? So double quotes, just add double quotes. Okay, now the error is gone. Okay, so everything was fine. This whatever the value you have provided, those value will go to this variable and it will store inside this variable. Okay, so inside this variable the argument which you are passing will store. Okay, and if you try to print the first name, the value which is storing, that will be printed. Let me try to print that. So let me try to print f name. Okay, so whatever the value you are passing as an argument, that value will be stored inside this, and that variable value will be printed here. Okay, this is what happens. So let me run. If you observe here, I'm getting the my value as psi. Okay, so this is how it works with parameter. Okay, and now we will discuss about the rules of parameter. Okay, and there are some rules. Let me discuss. Coming to the rules. So the first rule is the number of parameters should be same as the number of arguments. Okay, the number of parameters should be same as number of parameters. Number of parameters means, sorry, number of arguments. Okay, how many number of parameters are there, those many arguments should be there. It is necessary. Okay, if you observe there, if you observe previously what we have done, we have not provided argument, but there is one parameter. The matching is not means there is not matched with the number of parameters and number of arguments, right? Zero arguments and one parameter, it is not matching. That is the reason it is showing error. Okay, the number of arguments and the number of parameters should match. Okay, and coming to the next rule, the order of data types should be same. Okay, the order of data types should be same. So let me explain this. So let me have one more parameter here, like string. Let me give some other like int age. Okay, so here I am giving some 22. Okay, if you observe here, this is a string. Okay, I am passing argument also in the string format. This is the first parameter which is of type string. So I am giving here the first argument with the type of string. So it is matching. Okay, now this is of int. and here also the second parameter is data type is int. Now this is also fine. What happens if I try to do this? Okay, here I will give like this. So if you observe, I'm getting error because mismatch of data types is happening. Okay, so this is going as a first argument, which is integer value, and the second argument is string. But here the first parameter is of type string and second parameter is of int. But I am sending here first argument as int, but here second parameter is int. So mismatch of data types is happening. Okay, so the order of data types also should be them. It should be same. Okay, if the first parameter is of type string, then we should pass first argument which is of type string only. Okay, if we try to store other data types than the parameter type, okay, it will give error. Okay, it won't take, it will give error. Okay, so mismatch of data types will happen here. So that is the reason the order of data types also should be same. Okay, coming to the third rule. Coming to the third rule, the data type of parameter should be same as the data type of argument. Okay, so the data type of the parameter should be same as the data type of the argument. Okay, the data type of argument and the parameter should be same. Okay, that is what. So here the argument is string type. Here also the parameter is of string type. So it is necessary to have matching data type. Okay, we need to provide matching values according to the data type of the parameters. Okay, I hope it is clear the three rules of parameters. Okay, so these are the rules which we need to apply for the parameters. Okay, and now we will discuss about the execution flow of the function. Okay, so if you observe here, I'm having two methods here. So this is main method. We know this, right? This is main method and this is one more method. Okay, inside my main method I am having some body, and inside my second method is also I am having some body. Okay, so these two are different methods. Okay, but where the JVM starts execution, the JVM always starts its execution from the main method by calling the main method. Okay, so now as I am having, so where we will do calling statement, where we will be having calling of the method, this is calling statement, right? This is the calling statement. So the method which is having calling statement inside it, that method will be called as calling method. Okay, this total method we will be calling it as calling method because it is calling one more method. If you observe here, inside this public static, inside this main method, I am having calling statement, means it is calling one more method, right? So this main method is calling one more method. So this total main method now will become calling method. Okay, so coming to this is the method which is called by another method, right? So that is the reason we call this particular method as called method. Okay, what we call it as calling method, it is a called method. Okay, so what we can say as a function also, anything is fine. So what is calling method or function? So what is calling method? the method which calls another method is called as calling method or calling function. Okay, so coming to the next, which is called method or function. Okay, what is this called method or function? The method which is called by another method is called as called method. Okay, the method which is called by another method is called as called method. Okay, I hope it is clear. The method which is calling another method is called as calling method, and the method which is called by another method is called as called method. We are having two types of methods, which is calling method and another one is called method. Okay, so this is what we need to understand. If you observe here, so as the main method is calling this method, this will become called method and this will become calling method. Okay, this will become calling method and this will become called method. I hope it is clear. Let me know. Is it clear what is calling method, called method? Try to reply in the chat box quickly. Now, and if you observe what I said, the function syntax will be having return type, right? Will be having return type and parameters. Based on this return type and parameters, okay, the functions are again divided into four types. Okay, the functions are again divided into four types. Okay, so based on return type and parameters. Okay, the functions are again divided into four types. The first type is function parameter, without parameter and without return type. Without return type. Okay, and coming to the second, function with parameter, with parameter and without return type. Okay, and coming to the third, which is the function with parameter and with return type. Okay, and coming to the fourth one, which is the function without parameter, and with return type. With return type. Okay, these are the four types of functions which we are having in any programming language. Based on the parameter and return type, we will be dividing methods or functions into 4 types. Okay, we will see one by one. So first one is function without parameter and without return type. Means if it should not have any return type, means it must have void, right? If the method should not return anything, means it must have return type like void. Okay, and there is no parameter list. Okay, so what, we will just try to delete this, or we will just create one more method that is simple: static void test. Okay, I have created a method, and let me print some hello. Okay, so if you observe here, what is the return type here? Void, without return type and without parameter. Okay, I am not providing any parameters also. So this is the first case. We need to write a method without return type. If we are not providing any return type, then we should give void. Okay, without parameters. Then how to call this? With the help of calling statement. So let me call this. So what is the function name? Test. Whether I am having any parameters? No. Okay, I will end up with semicolon. Now let me save and let me execute. If I execute, I will get my output. So whatever the statement it is there, it will get executed. Okay, this is how the function without parameter and without return type will look. Okay, I hope it is clear. So coming to the second type, which is function with the parameter and without return type. Okay, return type should not be there, but parameters should be there. Okay, so let me go to my Eclipse. So if you observe here, that syntax, this is the syntax. Okay, let me delete this for now. Let me delete this also. So if you observe, there is no return type. Okay, and I am having parameters. For these parameters, how I will send the values in calling statement as an argument, right? So let me call this method display, and let me pass arguments. So I am passing Chindu and some 22. Okay, and if I try to print this, it should print name, and if I try to print age, it should print age also. Okay, so okay. So let me print this. So if you observe, I got my output. Okay, this is how the syntax of function without return type and with parameters will look. Okay, so coming to the third type, which is function with the parameter and with the return type. The return type should also be there. Okay, now the thing, I should give return type also, parameters also should be there. So parameters are always there. From before it is there. Now I need to give return type. If I want to give return type, I should return something from the method, right? So in order to return something from the method, we will use one more keyword, which is return. Okay, so with the help of this keyword, okay, we can return something, some value to the from the method. Okay, from the method we can return the value. So here after return we need to give some space, and we need to give here some variable or data, whatever the value we need to give, that value we need to pass here, and we need to end up with semicolon. Okay, this is the syntax how we will return some values from the method. Okay, but if you observe, I am having f name and age. I need to pass both. Okay, I need to return both. How I can do that? So if we do concatenation, by default it will become string, right? If we do concatenation, by default it will become string. So what I will do, I will just copy these things. Okay, I'm just erasing this statement. Okay, here I will just pasting my concatenation things. Okay, so void methods, yeah. So it is giving error because I have not specified here return type. Okay, I need to specify here return type. So what is the return type? What is the thing which what is the value type here which I am returning? String, right? So if we use this concatenation, we know, right, anything, if we try to concatenate with string, then it will become totally string, right? So here there is some space, I am trying to concatenate with string. Okay, so that is the reason total thing it will become string. So I am trying to return string, so my return type should be there, string. Okay, my return type will become string. So now whatever the value we are trying to return, that will be written in the format of string. Okay, so this is the calling statement, right? So I'm calling the statement. The values, the Chendu will be stored inside this variable, and this age will be stored inside this variable. I'm just concatenating here. So it will become Chendu 22. I'm just pausing this. I'm returning this from the method. If this particular method is returning something, then here, I should either print that or I should store that string, whatever the value it is coming from the method, I need to store somewhere, right? Whether I need to store, there are two options. We can directly print or we can store it and we can print. Okay, so what I will do means for now, just I will try to print directly. So let me have system ln. So inside that I am just calling my method. Okay, so now how it works? First, JVM will call the method. Okay, JVM will call this main method. It will execute the first statement, and now it will come to this statement. So inside this statement, I am having function call. So whenever the function call happens, it will directly flow of control will go to this particular method, and the values which are passed as a argument will be stored inside these parameters, and here it will try to concatenate those parameters or variables, and it will try to return in the format of string. Okay, so once this method returns something, what I am doing, I am having println statement, so I am just printing that. Okay, and later it will come to here and it will end the main. Okay, so let me save and let me print, let me run the program. So if you observe here, I am getting my output, right? So this is one of the way, and another way is we can store the returning value. So whatever the value which is written by method, we can store it and later we can print it. Okay, so let me show that also. So for now, let me have the calling statement alone. Okay, so after calling statement, we know this method will return something. If it is returning something, I need to store. So what I will do, as it will return string format, okay, I will be storing inside some string variable. So I will create string variable like result. Okay, and inside this variable I will store the value which is returning from the method, and later what I will do, I will just try to print that. Okay, so this is also one of the way whether we can directly print or we can store and print. So let me save and let me execute my program. So if you observe, I'm getting the same output as before. Okay, so this is how the third type of function will look like. Okay, I hope it is clear. And coming to the fourth type, which is function without parameter and with return. Okay, so there should be no parameter, but return type should be there. Okay, so let me remove these parameters then. Yeah, I'm just wiped out and I need to return something. Okay, so let me return something like hello. Okay, so as it is a string, I need to store in double quotes. Okay, so I have given return type as string. Okay, so now how it will work? Just after coming to this method, as it is not having any parameters, I am having return statement directly. So it will return this hello in the format of string, and here what I am doing, I am just storing that. So let me remove these arguments also, because the parameters and the number of parameters and the number of arguments should match, right? So I'm just removing this, and so this will return hello. Okay, that hello I will be storing inside this variable, and here I'm trying to print that. Okay, so let me save and let me run. So if you observe here, I'm getting the output as hello. Okay, so this is about the fourth type of function, which is without parameter and with return type. Okay, I hope it is clear. So any doubts, let me know. Okay, so if not, we will discuss one more concept, simple concept, which is function chaining. Okay, so function chaining. Okay, so what is this function chaining? Okay, so function chaining is nothing but one function calling another function, one function calling another function. Okay, like this the process will be continued. Okay, so what is function chaining? One function calling another function, another function. Okay, and the second function which is having here, this function is also again called the another function. This is called as function chaining. Okay, so let me show it in pictorial format. So think that this is a function, and this is one more function, and this is one more function. Okay, so let me give some names, as think that this is the function 1, and this is function 2, and this is function 3. Okay, so what we will do means, from this function, okay, I will be calling the function 2 inside this function. Somewhere I will be writing the calling statement to call the function 2. Okay, then what will happen? This calling statement will call this particular function, right? And inside this function 2, again I'm having one calling statement to call function 3. Okay, whenever I'm calling this function, then this function calling statement will call the function, right? So it will call this function now. Okay, like this we can have any number of function callings. Okay, so once it is called, as there is no think that there is no other calling statement, okay, then it will totally execute its instructions, and later it will come back to the same calling statement line. And okay, so after this it will try to execute everything down, and later it will come back. Okay, so later after completing all the instructions it will come back to the same line and it will execute everything. Okay, so how the flow is: first it will enter the function 1 and it will execute all the instructions. Okay, once it finds the function calling statement, okay, then it will call that the flow of control directly go to that particular function. Okay, and it will execute all the instructions inside the function too. Once it finds the calling statement, then it will call other function and the flow of control will again go back to that function, that particular function. Okay, and later it will start executing that function instructions. Okay, so once the function got completed, then again the flow of control will come back to the same function calling statement line. Okay, so after coming here, if there is any other statements pending, then that statements will be get executed, and this function again will get exited and come back to the same function calling statement line, and later this function will execute all other instructions and end the function. Okay, so if you observe here in the here also, this is also one of the function chaining only. If you observe here what we are doing, this is one function and this is one function, so this function is calling this function, right? So what is happening here, as it finds this calling statement, directly the flow of control is going here. Once the instructions got completed, it will come back to the same line. Okay, so this is also one of the case of function chaining. Okay, so function chaining is nothing but one function calling another functions. Okay, so one function can call two or more functions also, that is also possible. Okay, so think think that there is a think that there is a function. Okay, so and here one function, here one function. Okay, so this function, okay, think that the name for this is function 1 and this is function 2, this is function 3. Okay, so in the same function we can have two or more function calling statements also, like here it is calling for function 2 and later here it is calling for function 3. Okay, so this is also one of the function chaining only. Okay, so here it will call function 2, the flow of control will directly go to here, and once it completes its execution, later come back to the same line, and later it will execute other statements. Once it's find other calling statement, what it will do, the function control will go to here. Once it completes all the executions present inside this method, then again it will come back to the same function calling line. Okay, so this is also one of the case. Okay, so now what in this case, what is the caller function and what is the called function? If you observe, this function is calling this function, means this is caller function, right? So this is calling function or caller function, anything is fine. Okay, this is caller function. Okay, has this function, as this function is calling another function, this will become called function, right? This will become called function. Okay, and if you observe in this function also, it is calling one more function. Then this function is caller function for this method, for this function, right? So now this is caller function too, because it is calling one more function. Okay, so and what this will become? This will become called function. Okay, so in this case, if you observe in this case, this function one only calling the two functions, right? So this will become caller function and this two will become called functions. Okay, I hope it is clear the function chaining. So function chaining is nothing but one function calling another function. It may be calling only one function or it may be calling more than one function. Okay, so everything is possible, so it may call any number of functions, but one function if it calls another function, then it is called as function chaining. I hope it is clear.